trainer for Advantage Treatment Centers, and today we'll be reviewing the anti-harassment policy. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we begin, I do want to make note that there is a Google form that goes along with this presentation. Please fill out the Google form thoroughly in order to receive training credit. If you didn't receive the Google form, go ahead and request it to me via email. Thanks. Something to think about. Sometimes at work, people have found themselves the object of sexual advancements, propositions, or unwanted sexual discussions from coworkers or supervisors. The advances sometimes involve physical contact and sometimes just involve sexual conversations. Has this ever happened to you? At the end of this presentation, you should be able to define harassment and workplace violence, understand the prevalence of sexual harassment in the workplace, understand ATC's policy on workplace harassment and violence, and know how to prevent, identify, and respond to workplace violence and harassment. A discussion for the Google form: what is harassment? Be able to provide examples of both sexual harassment and other types of harassment. Now, sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly as a term of condition of an individual's employment, when submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as a basis for employment decisions affecting such individual, or when such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Some examples of sexual harassment include a completed or attempted non-consensual sexual act, such as rape, abusive sexual contact, groping, any unwanted physical touching or assault, or blocking or impeding movements. Non-contact sexual abuse, such as retaliating against another for refusing a sexual advance or for reporting an incident. Offering or providing favors of employment benefits, such as promotions, favorable evaluations, or favorable assigned duties or shifts in exchange for sexual favors. And conduct that creates a hostile work environment, such as unwelcomed requests for sexual favors, lewd or derogatory comments or jokes, comments regarding sexual behavior or the body of another, sexual innuendo or other vocal activities such as catcalls or whistles, repeated requests for dates after being informed that interest is unwelcome, obscene letters, notes, emails, invitations, photographs, cartoons, articles, or other written or pictorial materials of a sexual nature. Now, workplace harassment includes verbal or physical conduct that insults or shows hostility or aversion towards an individual. This is separate from the definition of sexual harassment. Now, these hostilities or aversion towards an individual include protected statuses that are protected by both federal, state, or local laws. These status include individuals' age, sex, sexual orientation, race, national origin, disability, creed, religion, genetic information ancestry, military or veteran status. Some examples of other type of workplace harassment include disparaging or abusive words or phrases, slurs, negative stereotyping, or threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts that relate to the above protected categories. Written or graphic materials that insults, stereotypes, or shows aversion or hostility towards an individual or group because of one of the above protected categories, and that is placed on walls, bulletin boards, email, voicemail, or elsewhere on our premises or circulated in the workplace. A display of symbols, slogans, or items that are associated with hate or intolerance toward any select group. Now, keep in mind, it's not possible to list all circumstances that may constitute other forms of workplace harassment. The following are just some examples. Another discussion for the Google form: the prevalence of sexual harassment. Who can become the victim of sexual assault? And how many people encounter sexual harassment in the workplace? Now, 81% of women and 43% of men have experienced some form of sexual harassment in their lifetime. And 43% of women say they've been sexually harassed specifically at work, while 48% of, or 12% of men say they've been sexually harassed at work. 40% of those people who've reported sexual harassment in the workplace experienced it 2 to 5 instances, while 28% experienced it more than 5 times. Now, a breakdown of sexual harassment specific to the workplace include harassment that is verbal sexual harassment, unwanted sexual touching, online sexual harassment, being physically followed, genital flashing, and sexual assault. Here is the breakdown of prevalence between women and men. Sexual harassment in the workplace also includes unwanted sexual advances and is abnormally reported mostly by women. 54% of women overall have experienced some form of unwanted sexual advances, while 30% of that is at work. And 23% is from someone that influences their work situation. Overall, employees who have been sexually assaulted at work equals 7% total of all female employees and 5% total of all male employees. Another discussion for the Google form, prevalence of sexual harassment. What does it really mean to have zero tolerance? Why is having a harassment policy even important? And what would you do if you became aware of a sexual harassment situation in the workplace? First, ATC's policy on workplace violence. First of all, we do have a zero tolerance policy regarding workplace violence, and we will not tolerate acts or threats of violence, harassment, intimidation, and other disruptive behavior, either physical or verbal, that occurs in the workplace or other areas. This applies to management, coworkers, staff members, non-employees, such as contractors, customers, or visitors. Zero tolerance policy in the workplace can include oral or written statements, gestures, or expressions that communicate a direct or indirect threat of physical harm, damage to property, or any intentional behavior that may cause a person to feel threatened. ATC's policy also prohibits specific conduct such as physically injuring another person, threatening to injure a person or damage property by any means, including verbal, written, direct, indirect, or electronic means, taking any action to place a person in reasonable fear of imminent harm or offensive contact, possessing, brandishing, or using a firearm on company property or while performing company business, except as permitted by state law, and violating a restraining order, order of protection, injunction against harassment, or other court order. Reporting incidences of harassment and/or violence is extremely important to keep a safe and healthy, productive workplace. Report to your director or human resources any behavior that compromises our ability to maintain a safe work environment. Write a letter if you want to stay anonymous. All reports will be investigated immediately and kept confidential, except where there is a legitimate need to know. You are expected to cooperate in any investigation regarding workplace violence. Violating a policy may subject you to criminal charges, as well as discipline up to and including immediate termination of employment. Now, why report? It won't stop unless you act. Sexual harassment doesn't stop unless someone makes them. If nobody takes action, they continue to harass, often escalating their behavior. There are probably others. Sexual harassers are predators. They often move from one victim to the next unless someone stops them. You might not be the first, but you may be the last. The law is there to protect you. The law forbids retaliation from employees who report workplace sexual harassment. If you make a good faith report, your employer may not retaliate against you. And keep in mind, 4 out of 5 people right now don't report. It can be confusing, isolating, and traumatizing experience for all. And we encourage everyone to report because you are protected. Now let's talk about retaliation. ATC's policy on retaliation states that victims and witnesses of workplace violence will not be retaliated against in any manner. You will not be subject to discipline for, based on a reasonable belief, reporting a threat, or for cooperating in an investigation, no matter the outcome. If you initiate, participate, or involve in retaliation or obstruct an investigation into conduct prohibited by this policy, you will be subject to discipline up to and including termination. If you believe you've been wrongfully retaliated against, immediately report the matter to your director or human resources. Another discussion for the Google form: what can you do to help prevent workplace harassment? What does a healthy work culture look like? And what role do I play in having a professional, positive work environment? Now, how do we prevent workplace violence? Here's some tips that we can keep in mind in how to prevent workplace violence. First, we complete a background check on new employees. Second, we create a policy that prevents harassment. Third, we create an effective line of communication with our staff. Fourth, we create training and awareness programs. Fifth, we establish a strict and violence policy. And lastly, we encourage our employees to accept individual differences and promote dignity and respect. Now, there's warning signs of a violent employee, according to the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. Warning signs can be immediate or can occur gradually over time. It is important to monitor negative behavior changes, as this may be a sign of worsened mood and desperation. Employers should be aware of potential warning signs. Say something if you see something in the workplace that could lead to violence. Some potential warning signs of a violent employee include a number of things. Keep in mind, these do not predict future behavior or will say someone will become violent. They're just warning signs to look out for and report, especially if it creates a hostile or unsafe work environment. Some of the warning signs are: perceives self as being treated unfairly and or humiliated, believes there's unfulfilled promises, i.e. waiting for a promotion or a raise that hasn't happened, shows sign of mental instability, blames others for problems, unexplained absenteeism, has strained work relationships and isolates self from others or suddenly becomes a loner, inability to manage feelings, outbursts of swearing or slamming doors, stated wishes for leadership to be hurt or die, has recently been disciplined and did not respond well to it, has a history at work of engaging in verbal abuse, fighting, and or using insulting language, displays contempt for other workers, appears to be moody or withdrawn, displays suicidal ideations, under a high amount of personal stress, displays paranoia. There's also other warning signs that we should look out for, including a history of substance abuse, clenching fists, slamming doors, throwing objects or tools, getting too close, invading another's personal space, heavy or fast breathing, shaking or trembling, threatening movements, angry yelling, sweating, foul language, finger pointing, has an attitude of intimidation, has an obsession with weapons, and has no job security. Again, these are not predictory behaviors. They're just things to look out for. Now, what can we do to promote a healthy workplace? We can treat everyone with respect, role model professionalism for both ourselves, our coworkers, and our clients. Use professional language in the workplace at all times when speaking. Use professional nonverbals and be aware of our body language. Listen, pay attention, and encourage positivity around us. And say something if you see something. Now, practice is the best of all instructors, and we know practice makes perfect. So here are some practice scenarios. These practice scenarios are in the Google form. There's 5 of them for you to review and answer the questions. You will see the scenario at the top, followed by 2 questions. What are the issues presented in this scenario, and how should staff respond? Please review all 5 scenarios and answer the questions on your Google form to get training credit. If you have questions, please contact me anytime at the information listed on your screen. I hope that you found this information helpful. Please refer to your employee handbook or ask questions to your director or admin if you have any issues, questions, or concerns. Thank you for paying attention to this presentation today. Please don't forget to fill out your Google form.